Well, of course, we continue to run our household surveys, and over the next few days, we're going to be sharing the latest from those results. And this is important because, as we're going to describe, there are some very significant and concerning trends running on below the surface. And in fact, on Tuesday, we're going to run the live stream specifically where you can drill down and get close to what's happening inside family finances across postcodes in Australia. But I want to start the conversation today with a bit of philosophy, because there is actually a fundamental disconnect between two different ways of thinking and using data. One is called inductive reasoning, and the other is deductive reasoning. Now, interestingly, most economists are using inductive reasoning, where they are drawing generalized conclusions based on specific information. And of course, the question then is, well, how much information is enough? And in fact, we are surrounded by acres and acres of data, and people use that to try and draw general conclusions into specific conclusions. Now, I have a problem with that insofar that you don't know whether you have enough data, you don't know whether the data that you've got is correct. And a good example is the information from Hilda. That's one of the big surveys that's done in Australia. But of course, it's heavily lagged, 2 to 3 years generally. And it's interesting that people like the RBA and a number of other economists use the Hilda data to try and justify their positions. I have a feeling that sometimes it's convenient rather than actually being accurate. Now, I don't use inductive reasoning. I use deductive reasoning. I start from a hypothesis. And the hypothesis, of course, then leads me to do some testing. And that testing is done through my surveys. It's a scientific method, actually. And that means that we can actually put in our surveys questions to test what we would expect to see. And in a good scientific approach, if we start seeing data that aligns with what we expect to see, we know we're onto something. Whereas, in fact, if the data signals something different, then we'd have to go back and start again. So I have a hypothesis that underpins the research that I do. And it's this. My hypothesis is that in Australia, there is a rising proportion of households who are experiencing significant cash flow pressures because of rising housing costs, higher goods and services costs compared with income. As a result of that, more are having to make difficult trade-offs when spending. So we would expect to see higher mortgage and rental stress, a greater use of food banks, and more calls to debt helplines.